Beginning this evening, Jews around the world will spend the next day disconnecting from their everyday life, observing Shabbat. It's a time to spend with family and loved ones, letting the stress of the week fall away. We emerge after Havdalah on Saturday night, refreshed and rejuvenated, ready to return to the work of the week. This week, we read Parashat Behar, which reminds us of the value of rest and recovery. We are to encourage growth in the earth by leaving fields fallow every 7th year, and in our community by refusing to deal dishonestly, or incorrectly, or inhumanely with one another. This twofold approach to kindness and mercy is remarkable, and it's worth taking a moment to dive into. The Parashat opens with specific instructions about how Israelites needed to handle their fields and crops. Not only were they enjoined to give fields a, quote, Sabbath of complete rest every 7 years, Hashem is clear that Hashem will provide enough food for the Israelites to last them through the 7th and 8th years before they can reap the next harvest. Clearly, we learn from the Torah that this is important enough, that Hashem explains clearly that the Israelites do not need to worry. Hashem will provide. Next, the discussion moves on to how to interact with fellow Israelites. How should you deal with each other in terms of business, in terms of purchasing and selling and buying houses? Well, we should know instinctively that we ought not to deceive others, regardless of how Hashem frames it. It's nice from the perspective of 2024 to know that the Torah tells us this is not just a suggestion. I'm not sure how you could be clearer than Leviticus chapter 25, verse 17. Do not wrong one another, but fear your God, for I am Hashem, your God. For me, this brings up an interesting point. In both examples I just mentioned, Hashem values people's actions much more highly than their words. Every commandment in this parsha is about an action, not about belief, not about the spoken word. And so, as I was preparing for this Torah portion, I was thinking a lot about sort of the events of the last week. On Sunday, the world got the news that a helicopter carrying the Iranian president crashed in northwestern Iran. Ibrahim Raisi, the president, died alongside members of his cabinet. As you might expect, this was major world news. In much of the Western world, the information was received with, shall we say, some muted joy. News outlets did not openly celebrate, but Raisi was no friend of the United States, and he provided funding to proxy groups like Hezbollah or Hamas that continued to enable attacks on Israel, including the attacks on October 7th. This prompted me to wonder, how do we in Judaism handle the death of someone whose actions so clearly violate Hashem's commandments? One way is by using a phrase that is the inverse of what we say when a member of our community dies. I'm sure we've all heard or read, may his or her memory be for a blessing. It's a common phrase in Judaism used to commemorate a life that has left a positive legacy. For people like Ibrahim Raisi, what we might say is, may his name be erased. It's just about as strong a curse, quote-unquote curse, as we have in Judaism. I posted online on Monday a picture of the news coming out of Raisi's death, along with the text of that curse. A few people asked me, and they asked me sincerely, why should we in Judaism celebrate someone's death? After all, he likely had a family, children, parents. And this is where I want to bring it back to this week's Parashat. As Hashem said, do not wrong one another. A person who participated in massacres of dissidents, who supported terrorism, who increased the repression of an entire gender of the Iranian population and ruthlessly crushed uprisings, has clearly violated Hashem's laws, regardless of whether he had a family, of whether he was nice to children, of whether he adored his dog. As we enter this weekend of rest, let us remember that the overriding commandment in the Torah, one that encompasses everything else, is to treat each other equally and with honesty and respect. Shabbat Shalom.